Hi, I'm Harry Joannou and welcome to Ridgeway Butchery. Hi guys, welcome back to Ridgeway Butchery. I hope you enjoyed the last couple of videos. The last one was the oxtail. Today we're going to do all the restaurant cuts. When I started in the trade many years ago, the biggest part of our business was supplying the restaurants. Today I just want to do all the restaurant cuts that buy from me at Ridgeway Butchery, and these are popular restaurant cuts that have been around in South Africa for many years. Most of the restaurant cuts come from this piece of beef, which is called the rump and loin. It has the fillet, the fillets, the rump, the T-bones and the Scotch fillets. I've got 4 rump and loins here, and we're going to get as many restaurant cuts out of these rump and loins that we can. We're going to start with the first rump and loin. I'm going to cut it the traditional way. So we're going to get the whole fillet out, we're going to get the whole rump and the whole Scotch fillet, or sirloin as they call it. I know in the States they call the fillet the tenderloin. Over here we call it the fillet. We're just going to take it out and we're going to debone this whole piece of meat. So everything that we're going to get out of the first rump and loin is going to be boneless. And then I'll show you how we portion them for the restaurants, how we get it ready to portion for the restaurants. So let's start with the fillet. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take off the fillet. In the States they call this beef tenderloin. We're going to trim all of that off and you'll get a solid piece of meat. Once we've got the fillet off, we need to take the rump steak off. As I've said in previous videos, meat always tells you where to cut. There's always a joint. You've got to look for the joint. Once you find the joint, you just make an indentation, turn it around, and then you try to connect the joint. So I'm just going to cut straight through here. As you can see, that's a clean cut. And we've just separated the two meats. That's your Scotch fillet, that's your rump on the bone. So now we're going to take the rump off the bone. As we said, we're deboning this whole rump and loin. Your rump, no bone, as you can see, full of sinews, full of fat. Obviously restaurants don't want that. We still have to trim all of that off and get it ready for portioning. Last part of the rump and loin is the sirloin or the Scotch fillet. Obviously this is on the bone. We're also going to remove that. And you'll see the Scotch fillet will literally pop off. Turn it like that, and there's your Scotch. Off the bone, ready to go. For me, the best meat off the beef is the fillet. A lot of people say to me they don't like fillet, it's not tasty, it's not this to me. They can say what they want, but this is the king of meat to me. The best part of the beef is the fillet. I'll tell you why it's the best part. As I'm trimming it, it's the best part because of its consistency. I always tell guys, if you mess up the fillet, it's not the fillet's fault, it's your fault. A chef, the best chef in the world, can take a rump steak which hasn't been aged properly or a sirloin and find it tough. That's the meat's fault. It hasn't been aged properly. This meat is fresh, so if you take it home now and you barbecue it or you braai it, These two cuts are going to be tough. You'll never get this with a fillet. The fillet is consistently soft. So what we do for the restaurants is we trim it like that. You see all the fat that's come off it. And then we just take off the membrane, and then it's ready for portioning. We are extremely lucky at my butchery that we have lots of restaurants that take a lot of different sizes, so it reduces our margin for error. So just straighten it off, and I'm going to show you a portion. So a very popular size is a 300 gram. I've been portioning for so long, I can tell you that's as close to 300 that you're going to get. We'll put it on the scale and let's see. How's that? In all my life that I've been portioning, I've never got it exactly. That was my first cut. I'm proud of myself. It's exactly 300 grams. That's a classic 300 gram fillet restaurant cut. It's absolutely beautiful. No fat, no sinew. If you as a chef bugger that up, don't blame the butcher, don't blame the meat. You only got yourself to blame. Cannot go wrong with that. And we carry on portioning the rest of the fillet the same way. So those are our portions for the restaurants. As it comes into the restaurant, no waste for the restaurant. The chef puts it straight onto the grill, straight onto the customer's plate. We always have pieces when we portion. We always have fillet pieces. These, because this is the most expensive piece of the beef, we always use it. We never ever lose it. And what we do is we're lucky that all our restaurants take the fillet pieces in a kebab. So we'll cut it up into kebab cubes and we'll skewer them. So most of our restaurants take it a specific size. So after we portion, we cube all the fillet pieces and we just skewer it for the restaurants. And we do this with beef, lamb and pork. There's your fillet kebab from your pieces, and that's your fillet portion. The rump steak. When I started in the trade 20-25 years ago, I don't even remember anymore, very popular piece of meat. It has become very unpopular because of its inconsistency. If you don't mature this meat, like the Scotch fillet, it is tough. I'm going to show you how I've been taught to portion for the restaurants and how I've taught my staff to portion for the restaurants. So you can see the rump is full of sinew. It's full of sinew and full of fat. This sinew runs right through the meat, so we've got to be careful that when we do portion, the customer who sits down at a restaurant and is paying premium price for a piece of rump does not get that sinew. So this is how we're going to portion it. And then we take off the cap, also known as the picanha. Take this off, and this is used in the restaurants for espetadas, but you can also portion it, so we use that. Commonly known as espetada, so we're going to cut that into portions. We take the rump and we're going to split it in half. We have sort of created three pieces where we can now portion. What I like to do is take that first slice off. It is very sinewy. Take the first slice off. I remove that because there's nothing wrong with that rump. That's a beautiful piece of rump if it ages. This is all sinew, will go into the mince. Same with this piece. The popular size, the most popular size of rump is 200 grams. So we're going to cut all of these into 200 grams. So let's see how good I am. There's maybe 200, and here's another 200, and we'll cut two 300s, which are also very popular. Once again, 238s and 200 grams. That's a 300 gram and a 340 portion. When you go into a restaurant, that's a beautiful piece of rump. You're going to get that on your plate, you're going to get that as a 300 gram rump. Can't go wrong. There's your 200 gram ladies rump on both sides here. So that's the rump steak done. Third piece of that rump and loin is the Scotch fillet or the sirloin. Very popular with the restaurants. Also needs to be, this is a beautiful, again I go on about South African beef, beautiful A2 piece of beef. However, it is very fresh. I think this came off the truck on Friday. This is going to be tough if it's not matured. However, a lot more popular with the restaurants because a lot easier to portion and you get that same size consistency. So I'm going to show you how we're going to square this off so that we can get that consistency in the sides, in the size of the steak, which is not that simple with the rump. We're just going to remove the chain. This is called the chain. Remove the chain and we're going to get almost a perfect rectangle. So every time we portion, every portion is going to look like the previous portion, almost exactly. So we're just removing excess fat and a little bit of that tail. And a lot of my restaurants don't want to be doing this. They want to get it portioned, cook it on the plate, done. So that's almost a perfect rectangle. We square it off a bit. However, like a lot of meat, the sirloin has a cap which is going to make it uneven, so we need to remove this cap. Cap ends about here. We just draw a line there. We just pull it off. Once it's off, we'll see we've got a perfect rectangle piece of meat and we're ready to go. Beauty of the sirloin is you're going to get them all exactly the same. A popular cut is 200 and 300. So let's start with the 300. And if you like me and you like a bit of fat on your meat, this is where the fat starts. We leave a little bit of fat because a lot of customers like the fat, it adds flavor. I love beef fat on my steak. And you can see it's consistent. You're never going to get that from a rump. No trick photography, guys. That's a 300 gram. Just years and years of portioning has allowed me to know more or less what's 300 and what's 200. Let's cut a 200 now. Once again, no trick photography, 200 grams. That's the sirloin done, guys. Another very, very popular cut is the T-bone. Now why I've had two rump and loins there is the T-bone is basically the sirloin and the fillet on the bone. So on the first rump and loin, I deboned it. So now obviously we have to leave the sirloin and the fillet on the bone to get the T-bone. So earlier you saw me take off the fillet. This time I'm going to leave the fillet on. We're going to do exactly the same. We're going to cut it in the joint. As I said earlier, just strip the joints. Very easy when you're a butcher, not that easy when you don't know what you're doing. The sirloin on the bone and the fillet on the bone, there's our T-bone. What that does do, however, it leaves a small fillet on the rump. So all we're going to do is just take off the short fillet, we call it the short fillet. There's your short fillet. It's a fillet, if we clean it. It is a much more difficult piece of meat to work with than the long fillet. Still the best piece of meat, the king of meats if you ask me. There we go. That's the short fillet ready to be portioned into portions and into kebabs. Once we've done that, we're going to move on to the T-bone. As we said earlier, the T-bone consists of the sirloin and the fillet on the bone. There's your T, but the fillet ends. So the T-bone literally ends there. The last thing a customer in a restaurant wants to go do is buy a T-bone and get a T-bone with very little fillet on. So we need to cut it there, leave a little bit of the fillet on the loin so that the restaurant customers get the T-bone. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to cut on the bandsaw and then we're going to portion the T-bones. Again, as I said, very popular piece of meat, the T-bone, ever since I can remember. Ever since I started in the butchery, the T-bone has always been very popular with restaurants. So we're going to cut it, leave a bit of the fillet on the loin, so that every single customer who orders a T-bone will get the fillet on their T-bone. So here goes. The most expensive piece of beef is the fillets, and when we start trimming T-bones, we always get a little fillet offcut. Nothing wrong with that piece of meat, beautiful, it will go into the kebabs. We're going to portion the T-bone now. So whatever we're going to slice, it's going to fit into one of the categories. The 700, not very popular. The 750, not very popular because those are huge. That's probably about there. So I'm going to slice the most popular, which is the 500 gram, the half a kilogram T-bone. Once again, not trick photography. Let me get this right. Completely wrong, but that's fine because that can go into the 650 category. So whatever we're going to slice, it's going to fit into one of the categories. The last cut that I'm going to show you guys is actually the best cuts because it combines two things that I love. It combines the fillet and we leave it on the bone. I've always said that meat on the bone adds meat to flavor. I really believe that. And now you're combining the two. You're combining the fillet with the bone. This one's for my cardio. A few years ago I went to my cardiologist for a checkup. I took him some biltong, funny story. And before I gave it to him, I asked him if he was vegetarian. I didn't want to offend him. A lot of people get offended. You give them biltong and they're vegetarians. When I asked, I didn't know him at all. When I asked him, Doc, are you a vegetarian? I think he wanted to jump over the table and start giving me a beating. He gave me a whole lecture on how we were designed to eat meat and why we should be eating meat, and this is coming from a cardiologist. I eventually gave him the biltong and he's actually become a very, very good customer of mine, and he loves this cut. So Doc Angel, this cut is your cut. I know you love it. Let me show you where it comes from. This is for Dr. Gavin Angel. So, as I said, we're going to leave the fillet on the bone. Once again, we have to remove the rump. Again, same process. Meat always tells you where the joint is. Turn it around. When you cut through the joints, the meat comes off easy, a bit of twisting, a bit of crocodile twisting, and it's off. So now, we've got the T-bone again. This time, we want to debone half the T-bone. We're going to take off the sirloin and leave the fillet on the bone. Cut as close to the bone as possible to get maximum margin out of the meat. Through the meat like that, and it will just pop off. Very, very simple. If you know what you're doing, you turn it and it should come off. One cut, and there it is. Now we have left the fillet. We're not going to debone it, obviously. That's why it's called fillet on the bone. Has become very, very popular with the restaurants. Doc, I know you love this cut. This one's for you. We've left the fillet on the bone. We are now going to portion it. has become very popular with the restaurants. I don't supply any restaurants with this cut, but I know my doc loves it. The last way that restaurants take these cuts of meat is when the chefs want it whole. So we as butchers just debone it, and I'll show you how we cut them. We vacuum pack them and we send it to the restaurants whole, and then the chef likes to portion it himself. I've never run a restaurant, so I don't know if that's the right way to do it or the wrong way to do it. They do get it a little bit cheaper because it saves us the labor of cutting it and portioning it, and that might be the reason why. I have no idea, but let's do the portioning, whole portioning of the rump and loin. So, the restaurants don't want to take it like that because they won't be able to process all the pieces that come off the rump. They won't be able to process the fat. The restaurants, when they buy it whole, they want to just portion it with very little waste. So this is how I'm going to supply it to them whole. So guys, that's how we send it to the restaurants. Ready to slice, very little waste. That's your rump steak. That's your whole sirloin, also ready to go. And your whole fillet. And those guys are your restaurant cuts. Thanks guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and press that little notification bell so that you can get all the updates on different meat cuts. Thanks very much.